Hey, so once again, good morning, everyone. My name is Mehek, and welcome to another session of the Changes Be Connected webinar series. So today's topic is making data work, an introductory dive into EDM for reporting. In this session, we'll explore how enterprise data management lays the foundation for reliable, fast, and accurate business reporting by ensuring that data is consistent, governed, and ready for decision making. We are thrilled to have a great solution architect that has over 26 years of experience in data architecture, integration, and governance. His expertise spans Oracle EBS, Oracle Fusion, Microsoft Dynamics 365, and cloud ecosystems. He has also worked across industries including manufacturing, retail, B2B, construction, and financial service. We have Philip Ilango Viagapa. Philip will walk us through the fundamentals of EDM and its importance for reporting. Along with the key design principle and strategies, he will show us how businesses can adopt different strategies to achieve reporting excellence. With that, let's get started. Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mahak, for the quick introduction. So once again, this is Philip Ilango Viagapa from Changes. I've been part of Changes for more than 15 plus years and being in this industry for 26 plus. And thank you for this opportunity. Without further ado, let me directly jump into the topic. So today we are going to have a complete introduction session for EDM focused on the reporting. When you say reporting, what you need is the data. So how you understand the enterprise data and how do you really make it available for the reporting, that's where we are going to focus. Because when it comes to EDM, the EDM can also be used into multiple other entities when it comes to the enterprises. Okay, so our focus is predominantly going to be understanding the data on the EDM and setting up the process and policies related to focusing on the reporting side of it. Okay, so these are the list of subtopics that we would be covering up, like starting with what is EDM and importance of EDM, design principles, and all the way we'll go to the data processing, with real time versus batch and the volume processing and time. Okay, and at the last we'll give like 10 minutes, close to 10 minutes for the Q&A. So what is EDM? So enterprise data management, it refers to the process and policies and technologies to manage the data asset that belongs to an enterprise. This should consist of the data integration, movement, centralized data governance, including the master data management, data security, and it should support the BI and analytics. So in a simple term, when it comes to EDM, people would think, oh, I have a bunch of source systems. I got to just extract or ingest the data and curate it as per the need, put it into a storage, readily available for the reporting. Is that not simple? That's how we start with. Of course, to start with, it's a simple, but when you go further, it's going to get slowly complicated. So let's go further. So what is the importance of EDM? So EDM is a single source of truth that refers to having one authoritative data source that is used across the organization for the reporting and analytics. It means all the departments, all the functions in the enterprise should rely on the same consistent and quality data. With single source of truth, that should eliminate the duplicates across the data, and everyone refers to the same data, which reduces the inconsistencies and eliminates the confusion caused by the conflicting reports and different data from different sources. And the next point is about enhancing the trust. So when you have a data in one place, consolidated and without duplicate, that really enhances the trust and the confidence on the data that business is going to access. And when you create any measures, that is KPIs, out of that single source of truth, that also builds the confidence on the leadership level to see the summarized data at the organization level. Then single source of truth again, right? It supports the integrated analysis and across the different functions, such as sales, finance, operations, or HR, or you take any department within the organization. That's going to help them by ensuring all the teams are using the same data definitions and metrics. So this helps better collaboration and holistic decision making too. So when it comes to importance of the EDM, let's understand the process a little bit. So when it comes to, so the first slide you would have seen, hey, I have a list of all sources. Yes, can I just pull everything into my EDM? That's a big question. So you start with data assessment. So what data is really required for me to pull into my lake or into my warehouse? So that's the data assessment process by itself. It's a big topic. We can discuss it later, but that's the first step that you do to understand your source systems and what data you are expected to bring into the EDM so that you can supply the right data for the reporting. Then it comes to the enterprise data movement. So how do you do it? There are multiple ways, there are multiple tools and the systems, functions. I'm not going to spend much time. Ingest the data into the data lake and then talk about the data quality. Data quality is the next important step that you take care. For example, you supply any data to a reporting, the data accuracy, or for example, since you are collecting data from multiple source systems like ERPs, or you collect from external systems, and data could even come from an external files or a structured or unstructured data, it might potentially create duplicates. So make sure you eliminate the duplicate. That's going to be one of the data quality rules. I have a separate slide for the data quality, so we'll talk a little bit more on that when we get into it. And then it comes to the data catalog. The data catalog is another piece where you organize your metadata and make sure the metadata is meaningful and accessible to the business, so people will quickly understand what the data is all about. The last but not the least is the data analytics. That's when you literally do all the required transformations or KPIs that needs to be really built for the purpose of the reporting. Again, where do you build this measures in EDM layer or at your reporting layer? We'll have a little bit of touch base at the later, but that's the last step on the EDM process to make sure the data is readily available for the analytics or the reporting purpose by doing the real analytics on the data that we brought in. And if you see the diagram below this, you will also have multiple layers built in within the EDM layer, where we have bronze, silver, and gold. These are the different stages where you can take the data from one to other. Not going to dive much into it, but ultimately, these are the stage kind of an area where you can keep your bronze and silver, but gold is normally the layer that we get the data ready for supplying it for outside. For example, in this case, for reporting, that's where the data is going to get read from. When it comes to EDM principles, the first and foremost that you do is create the unified data model. Comes to unified data model, what does that mean? So you might get the same data sets, for example, customers from multiple systems, or invoices, even the transaction data like invoices could be coming from multiple systems. So you create one set of structure that would consume all different sources and divide that into facts and dimensions, and then create a user-friendly star schema or a snowflake related schema. Those are little examples. Then it comes to denormalize. So why do we do denormalize? To make the reporting faster. There are EDM, you can still do. I mean, if your focus is going to be on the reporting, then you may, skip some of them. But if your focus is going to be on the reporting side, make sure you denormalize the data as much possible before you hand it over to the reporting team. And the other thing is like use the surrogate keys. I mean, do not just rely on, for example, the customer ID that's being given, which is still going to be unique on the system. But sometimes it could still even lead to a potential duplicate if you don't use your surrogate key. And you use your surrogate keys, make sure those keys are passed across your dimensions to the fact. And in case if you're creating your measures like KPIs, make sure you pass it to that. Then include the calculated metrics. Yeah, we talked about it. And then the design readability for analytical use, meaning use a clear and meaningful names for the tables, fields, and organize the data logically so that it's going to be pretty easy when a developer or a data analyst, business analyst who's going to take a look at the data from your side. And data collection from multiple sources. So what are the sources that you might collect? Most of the organizations, they'll have for sure an ERP. It could be anything. It could be Oracle, Dynamics 365, or SAP, or there are so many other, right? This is one side. For sure, they'll have some CRM systems. So that's why I just picked some examples on each. And for sure, some external APIs. Hey, what kind of an external APIs it could be, for example, right? So the finance team would be definitely in need of the exchange rate, the most recent exchange rates always coming to your system. So that's an example. And what else? The other option could be, say, people are feeding the customer and customer addresses, and you might need to make sure the customer addresses are right and stuff like that. So you might have an API link like DNB or for address validation, or even Google API for that matter, or even USPS supplies the Google API, sorry, the address APIs. And there are other cases like you might receive a lot of unstructured data from customers, like you have a scanned copy of their order or scanned copy of your invoice or the diagrams and so on. So each, depending on the nature of the business, that could be a number of scanned unstructured files would be just poured into your data lake or coming to the data analytics. And then the last is about the use of connectors. So how do you connect to all the systems? So I've given again few samples. For example, SAP, you need an SAP GSQL connector. If it is a database, you might go with the JDBC, and you have SOAP, REST, SFTP. There are so many things that's going on. So are you going to use the legacy method of writing codes? No, use proper ETL tools so that all these connectors are readily available, and its functions might be slightly hidden, but it's nothing to do with the ETL developer. All that you do is just go create a connection with an appropriate credentials and then start consuming the data. Next, yeah, as I said, so let's talk about the ensuring the data quality. How do you do it? So first is apply some simple rules, right? Let's talk about applying some validations on the data. What could be an example? Say, apply an automated checks when the data enters into the system to ensure it meets the expected rules and standards. So say, for example, when you import the customer data, check that email address follow the proper format. A phone number follows a proper format. And even further, somebody enters an address, validate the address. Again, valid for validating an address, do you do by yourself? No, just realize there are a number of services available in the world, API services are available, consume it, and make sure you get the right addresses back into the system. Number two is check for missing and duplicate or the inconsistent data. Let's talk about example. What do you mean by missing data? For example, you receive an order without a product ID or a customer ID, which means there is something really missing in the data that you receive. Mark it for quality checks. Then duplicates. I have already covered few times in the previous slides. The moment you touch multiple sources, there is a high chance you are encountering the duplicate data. Not only masters, sometimes even the transactional data. But it doesn't mean if you have single source, just one ERP system, and you do not even assume your data is going to be right at the day one, that could be a chance people create multiple duplicate entries of the same customer multiple times. But how do you check it? Again, I'll give an example. You have two different customer names with the same phone number and the same email ID, which means, yeah, that's a potential duplicate, right? And what does inconsistency means here? Say, for example, you receive a data from, say, an ERP with a customer residing in USA with a country code. The same, you're receiving data from your CRM that gives you an information like, hey, this customer belongs to United States of America. Technically, when you validate, it might technically fail. These two doesn't match, but logically they are right. So the data is inconsistent across the systems, or sometimes it could be even the same system. If it is a free form, there is a chance to prone to errors. So make sure you check for all these inconsistencies within the data and standardize your formats. What does that mean? So again, an example, you take a date. If you decide to follow the format of YYYYMMDD, ensure that it is across your entire data design. You follow the same format rather than having it in a different format in a different place. So that's the standardization of the formats. Then let's touch base on the little bit on the profiling tools. So the starting point of all this is going to be with the use of profiling tool. What that means is you can start using these tools, which would give you a good idea. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to give you 100% all your duplicates or all your, validation rules, but it's going to give you a high level details of, hey, how much it's going to be, the data is going to be good based on a default or a common practices. That could be number of business rules that might be specific to the business that would even lead to more data inconsistency identification. But this data profiling tools would give you majority of it. So try to understand which data profiling tool is going to be good for your organization before even you start this. So on the same topic, so we would like to deep dive a little bit on the dedupe strategy, right? So as I said, if there are two customers having the same email and the phone number, they are considered to be duplicates. And as another example, if you find two different products records having the same SKUs and the name, treat them as duplicates. So these rules are typically strict matches, are very depending on the nature of the data. There are other options, right? Meaning you can use the fuzzy logics, matching algorithms. There are a number of matching algorithms available. Choose the right fit, use it. So you will be able to identify the closest match. For example, people might use google.ing and google.com. Typically, it could be the same customer, So using the fuzzy logic algorithms is going to yield you much more granularity to identify the duplicate data. So okay, so I assume that you did configured so many rules and identified. What is that I'm going to do next is identify the gold record. So which one you would like to keep it for the further reporting, and which record is going to be marked as, okay, this is a duplicate, I'm going to ignore. That could be a chance, if there are 5 different duplicates found for a same customer and you are required to choose one, at times you may mark the rest of the 4 as ignored, or you may have to even sometime merge the records based on your need. So be aware of it. Once again, how do we do it? There are a number of data quality tools and services available. Try to leverage it. So the number of work that you're going to, the hours that you're going to put with the data quality, it's going to reduce a lot. These tools will definitely help you. And then I'm slowly moving into the data governance framework, right? So what is the data governance is all about? First and foremost, we got to assign the clear roles and responsibilities for managing the data sets. For example, data owners, they are the people, typically business leaders, accountable for the accuracy, privacy, and data stewards, or they are the people who ensure the day-to-day quality and consistency of the data and make sure the data is adhering to the standards. And why is it really matter for us? It prevents the confusion about who's responsible for data issues, and that drives the real accountability. Then it comes to the data catalog and the metadata management. So we got to maintain a centralized inventory of the data catalog with all the data assets that you have, and data catalog that helps the users to discover the data assets, understand their structures, and track their origin. This should also include all the metadata, definitions, formats, data type, relationships like lineage and stuff. The next is go to the policies. So we have to establish a clear rules for access, meaning who can view or modify the specific data. For example, it could be a role-based access, but still before you go to the role-based access, identify the people, identify the group of people who can really access the data, either view or update or edit. So usage is the guidelines. The second is the usage, which means guidelines for ethical and compliant data usage, especially for the sensitive data, because some of the data can be classified. Data classification is a separate discussion. So based on the data classification, you might say, hey, this set of data is kind of a public access. I can even give it to public, but this set of data, I would just give it to only the entire organization. And there's another sensitive data. No, this is going to be accessed only by the specific set of people within the organization. It could be from one department, it could be from multiple departments, that based on the business need. So that's again the access, that's the usage. The next piece on the policies or the retention. So make sure you have the clear retention policies. For example, an HR data, HRs could say, hey, maintain all the personal data of customer or anyone and or employee personal information for 7 years, but after 7 years of their moving out of the company, make sure you archive it. Such kind of policies should be written and followed. The last on the data governance is the audit trials and compliance. So track and log who accessed and changed what data, when and how. This provides the transparency and supports the regulatory compliance. So for example, logging changes to financial reports, reporting access to personally identifiable information. And what are the benefits it's going to give us is unauthorized activities can be monitored, and it ensures the accountability, and it supports audits and legal requirements. And let's talk about a little bit on the row level security. I'm also a little bit, monitoring that my time. So when it comes to row level security, what does it drive? So identify the people who can see what data. For example, regional head, say, let's take a sales department from a region, North America. So a North American sales region head could only see the North America sales. Assume that that's the business requirement. So make sure that's been implemented right. Similarly, you could always say, no, none of the data should be visible to your different levels of people who are in the system. Say if you have a level 1 all the way to level 12 in your organization, say, yep, none of this data should be accessible until level 1 to level 5, only level 5 and above should be able to access certain. Okay, but that's another example. And we can give like hundreds of different combinations. So make sure this is being captured and it's been implemented right on the layers. But where do you really implement this RLS? Is it only at your data storage level or at your database level? or at the reporting level. Most of the time, it ends up doing it both side, meaning you do majority of the lift and shift on your data side of it, and then make sure it's been rightly integrated to the reporting layer. Make sure you are working with the reporting team to make sure it's right, they are rightly consuming it. Okay. The next topic is about batch versus real time. So this is to make sure, when do we really run these extracts? That's a question, right? So is it once a day, twice a day, 10 times a day, every hour, every minute, or you need it right away? That's completely driven by the business requirement, but there are options always available to run it in a batch mode, or immediate in a real time, or even using the streaming process. So I've given a small table here to go over some of the differences between all three, and make sure this is again be chosen by the business need. And when it comes to business need, people might always say, hey, I need it right away, but ask why and try to understand the reason before even you commit to it. Because doing the real time, it always adds a lot of complexity versus doing it in the batches. So make sure you collect the requirements right and understand the complexity, and go ahead with the right approach which you would like to choose. One of the things that we need to really understand is, when you start the project, any project, you might start with a lower volume, but over a period of time, your volume is going to increase like crazy based on the organization size. So make sure, the reason why I brought up that point is this: your data volume is processing time. When you design it, make sure it's scalable. So what do you mean by scalable? It's a simple term, right? When you say scalable, when the volume grows, right, beyond certain limit, make sure the design that you made, it does not degrade the performance. How do you do it? Make sure you optimize your pipelines and design your pipelines to handle large scale, ingestion, transformation, and optimizations. Okay, you can do the optimization using some indexing methodology or partitioning. That's another thing. The third is about, do as much as pre-aggregations as possible for reporting, because if you send like millions of data directly to a report, it's a tough call for the report to get displayed within no time. So make sure you have enough pre-aggregations done at the data layer rather than at the reporting layer. Do as much as parallel processing to reduce the latency. So when the moment it comes to parallel processing, again, that's a separate topic. You cannot just have like 100 or 1,000 parallel processing without understanding your infrastructure. So make sure you understand your infrastructure, set it up optimizely, and then if you need more, make sure to get it adequate. What I shouldn't do, or what should I avoid? So number one, a lack of data governance. Avoid it. The moment you do not do the governance, that's going to hit you more on the compliance side. So make sure you have the right requirements on the governance, captured, documented, and followed. And ignoring the source system changes. What does that mean? So when you receive data from ERP or from different sources, that source system is prone to change. They might change their structure. They might change the way it functions. So make sure those are tracked rightly and passed on to the EDM layer. If you ignore it, yeah, the next day or the same day, your ETL logics will fail. The third is over complex ETL logic. What does that mean? Yeah, sometimes we might get a big logic from the customer. You can do it with like say 10,000 lines of code. Try not to do it. Try to make it as simple as possible, or break down into a smaller chunks, so that your maintenance is going to be much easier when it comes to if you would really like to keep this logic for at least for a while until the business changes. The last point is on the reporting alignment. What does it mean? You should make sure you bring the data, you do the aggregations, you do all the KPI calculations based on the business need. That means from day one of this design, you should start having conversations with the right business stakeholders, right business data owners, to collect your requirements. any small mistake cost there would have a costly effect on your EDM output.
Thank you, Philip. That was very informational. Um, so let's start the Q&A session and dive deeper into that. So the first question we have is RAG used in this reporting tool?
I mean, this is a specific question for the reporting tool. So I haven't talked about any specific reporting tool in this context at all. So, it
Okay.
depends on the reporting tool, but every tool should have it. That's it. Okay.
Okay. Another question is, what are the first steps an organization should be taking while implementing this EDM for reporting?
First step is, as you know, in the software engineering, right? So the first step is always collect the requirement, right? We talked about, there are many things in the slides that, we said identify the source systems. What are the systems? That's where we started with, right? The first few slides, we started with identify. So identify the top level source systems. Then deep dive into each source system and understand what data that you need. At that point, give a pass. Make sure you collect not only the business requirement, also collect the technical requirements, like what is the volume that's going to come up from each of the source. Make sure that's documented. Then these are all should be done in the initial stage of the project. Okay, you cannot do the design completely and then go back here. It's going to have a lot of negative effects. So the more you left out, the more the pain you will be facing at the end of the story. Okay, so collect as much as possible. And in real world, none of this is going to be 100% because the business is actually changing. If, say, for example, you take like 3 months or 6 months to develop this, and by the time you go live, by the time the business would have changed a little bit. So that constant change is always going to be there. So I would always suggest collect as much as possible, but make sure all the source systems are right. Within the source system, if you miss few, it's okay, you can just bring it back. But make sure you identify the source system right, so that when you design your model, you will make sure you will give a room for every different structures of the data that is going to come in.
The next question is, how does EDM create a single source of truth, and why is it critical for business reporting?
That's a good question, but I believe I covered a little bit why it is needed. You should also know how do you really define the single source of truth. For example, a simple example is if you have an ERP, you will always have for sure your customer data would come from ERP system. You will store it because you are doing invoicing with an ERP, right? But the same customer would also come from your CRM system, and you bring two customers. Where do you store? Do you really store it in two different tables? Bigger question mark. And assume you're storing it in two different tables. How do you link? You should have a proper link. So again, based on your reporting need, it's your choice, because you're going to, at the end of the day, you're going to denormalize. So make sure which is your source of truth for the report. At times, there are certain CRM related report, your source of truth might be a CRM system, but all others, it could be an ERP. So the recommendation is always try to merge these two and keep it in one structure. Unless otherwise that becomes really complicated, try to keep it as one. So this is an example. The moment you have two different customer table, a new developer comes in and say you have a nice catalog too. He goes and look for the data catalog, but yeah, oh, there are two customer tables with a similar definitions. Which one should I go and take? Having a single source of truth, this is the starting point. I'm just talking in terms of a developer side point of view. We can talk all the way up to the management level. What are the different type of problems that business could face? Because if this guy does not have a right understanding, he took a wrong data that goes all the way up, that will end up in making a wrong decisions, because your data is wrong, your numbers could be wrong, your calculation might be missed out.
The next question is, can you elaborate on how denormalization, surrogate keys, and star or snowflake schemas are applied to EDM to
Okay,
optimize reporting?
it's a big question to answer. Maybe I'll take the
In
first
a
two in
short,
one, because the other things probably you need little diagrams. For example, star schema and stuff. You really needed diagrams to go and explain and walk through. But surrogate keys are the keys that you really generate on your own on the EDM side. Mostly it's an automated generated numbers. For example, if you have a customer table, again, go with the same customer example, customers will have a unique number for the organization. Do not use that as a primary key. Have a
Okay.
customer ID, warehouse ID that is generated within the EDM. Every
Okay.
system right now, supports EDM, they give an option to create surrogate keys. So you don't have to sit and write your logic. Just use the functions, create the key. So it creates a unique number for every customer. Use that key, travels through all the transactions. For example, a customer and customer address, customer payment method, custom, and goes on, right? Everything is a child table for this. So make sure this is the key that is referenced rather than using a customer number or a customer name, which probably might be unique. Or most of the time, customer name is not unique. Customer ID would be the unique number, but never rely on it. Use this and take all the way this to the customer invoicing, customer payments, and till your report.
Okay.
And the one of the reason is like it also makes the reporting team to get it right, because at times that could be more than one key, one columns that could form a primary key. And when it comes to reporting for them, it's going to be really hard in case if they need to join. And so the recommendation is always to go with create your own surrogate key with the combination of all three, keep incrementing it so that can be referred easily anywhere. So
Well,
that is the thing.
that answers some of that question.
Yeah, it's only partial
And
answer because there are so many other things. So what is the first topic? I think I covered only surrogate keys.
so it was denormalization, star
Okay.
or
Let-
snowflake schemas.
So let's talk about denormalization. So why it is needed? Say a complex report, for example, let's take a balance sheet or an income statement, or even, for example, if you take a supply chain related, complex reports, and you have a normalized data, they may have to link like 15 or 20 different tables to link the data, fetch the information, publish it. Assume the moment you have a denormalized data, which means you may not be having much of pre-aggregated information. So report have to do the aggregation. So you're combining all this and then doing the aggregation at the runtime with the volumes that we have seen in the organizations. Somebody has to go and click the report, wait for 15 minutes. Which means you're failure. Business would think, oh, my entire process is failed. The main supplier for the reporting the data is the EDM. Report would say, yeah, this is how the structure is, and it's going to take 15 minutes for me. But that's not what business need. Business need the report to come in like a couple of seconds. So the only option that you do is you denormalize the data as much as possible for the specific to the reporting. You cannot just like that do everything and keep it in one and every report go and just read one data. That is also not going to work. It's always going to be your requirement versus the design, which is going to give an efficiency.
Okay, we're gonna do the last question, which is a very generic one, which is good, not getting into too much detail. The question is, how do you see the role of EDM evolving with emerging technologies like AI, ML in reporting?
At least for now, for sure, it's going to reduce the time that we spend on designing this EDM based on the requirements. Meaning, in the past, like 5 years back, if I would have spent like say 1,000 hours for a design, just putting some arbitrary number, now it could be like 400 or even less because of all this AI it's all emerging from the learning, right? Machine learning, right? How it's evolved. Like we were keep building, for example, like 10 years back, I don't think there was any concept of data cataloging and stuff. People maintain data libraries, they literally manually maintain, we go and look at it, and it takes most of the time it gets outdated after a few years. So we got to spend a lot of time on understanding the data structure going through, but now we have, with all the data profiling tools and stuff, the changes provide holistic platform that could do everything that we talked about today. So which means I just connect and wait for my profiling results to come out to understand my data quickly. Then before even going to the business, I'm able to identify, guys, like I found like 500 attributes which you are using only like 150 or 200. based on this results. I'm not writing any code or anything to find out. Now AI, now it comes like one more advanced level. All the tools now, you create the tables based on the data that you go. It just started building the catalog on its side, on its wall. Okay, which means
Right.
the work that is involved is getting slowly reduced. But please do not ask me whether it is going to be 100% automated. I got no clue whether that's really possible. But at least for now, it's going to make the or it's going to reduce the time a lot. It's going to help business a lot in terms of consuming less times by the architects, by the designers, even by the developers. Because AI
Okay.
now provides almost every code that you need. You don't have to sit and open the Google, try to find out, and then it just gives you a code, take it, do modify, and you're so start from the business all the way to the developers. It is actually reducing a lot of their efforts 5 years or 10 years down the line. Uh, no idea. Let's wait and watch.
All right. Well, thank you for that and that insight to what we can expect in the future. But for now, that concludes today's session. Heartfelt thank you to Philip for sharing his expertise and invaluable insights, and also thank you to all the audience members who joined and engaging us with some questions. We hope that this session sparked new perspectives on how EDM can drive you with accuracy, trust, clarity, maybe in your reporting strategies. For the future, we'll keep an eye out on your inboxes if we will keep you updated with our next webinar series session. Well, until next time, have a productive day. My name is Mehek once again, and thank you everybody for attending.